Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to check out a plugin called PreQursor2 from PSP. So firstly, if you are new to my channel and you like what you see, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So PreQursor2 from PSP, this is a EQ, hence the name Precursor. It's sort of like Q for cursor. It's a second version of it, I'm guessing. I never tried the first version. And not only is it an EQ, but it also includes some analog warmth and drive componentry to it. So this may be exactly the plugin that you're looking for to add a little bit of analog characteristics to your digital based songs with some nice EQ features and, you know, standard obviously EQ functions. So anyway, let's just get into it and I'll show you around the plugin and see what you think. All right, so here we are in Cubase and we have a song loaded up. We've got the PSP PreQursor2, cursor with a Q. I'm assuming it's pronounced cursor, not cursor, but I could be wrong there. Who knows? It's obviously an EQ, as you will see here, but what's the difference between it and any other EQ? Well, we're going to turn to the manual for that. So the PreQursor2 offers PSP's uniquely designed filters with low resonance peaks for reduced ringing artifacts, great band separation, and narrow notching when attenuating. All four filters. Okay, so we've got four filters. Are bell type filters when boosting and have progressive Q factors. Okay, so we've got four bands. They're calling them filters and they're bell shaped. Guessing the terminology to filters, it could still just mean standard EQ bands. So I guess it depends on your terminology. You know, we've got a low filter by this, a low mid filter, high mid filter, and a high filter. It looks like we've got various frequency ranges for each one and Q settings, whatever else. We'll get into the actual controls and the detail of them in a minute. So let's keep going with the manual description anyway. So the PreQursor2 introduces PSP's advanced analog modeling of preamplifier and filters to make the operation of the plugin even more analog-like accurate than previous PSP equalizer emulations. The analog modeling algorithm can be enabled and controlled per instance or globally per group of instances. Oh, interesting. Okay. The latter allows for easy control of the amount of analog-like processing on either selected tracks or all tracks in the mix. That's a nice little feature there. Yeah, okay. So we can obviously group these across multiple tracks and do some sort of work together. I'd be interested to see what controls the group functions on. Is it only the analog processing or is it more? So all of these characteristics result in a processor that not only sounds excellent on acoustic tracks, overall mixes, or any other application, but also allows you to virtually create the input console for all tracks in your mix with easy and convenient controls. In every usage case, PSP PreQursor2 will maintain the natural feel and definition of the material. Okay, so they're sort of stating that doing this is going to allow you to create that emulation of using a mixing console desk, I guess, and have that analog characteristics imparted across each of the tracks to get that uniform sound of analogness. You know, I'm using weird words here to describe what people are looking for. All right, so let's check out, that's a bit of a blurb of what the plugin is supposed to be, which sounds great. It's a great sales pitch there. But let's have a look at the controls and then we'll obviously have a listen to what it does. So we have a phase button here. So if we obviously have to reverse the phase or the polarity, whatever you want to call it, we can do that. Right, we have an analog drive we have, well, that is the knob here. Okay, we have, we can go negative with the analog drive, we can go positive. So this knob sets the amount of advanced analog modeling drive for the instance or the group. So I guess this is where we can change this for each one of these plugins if we had multiple, or we could group it and adjust this setting across the entire group. So that's a nice feature. As I stated, the setting of this knob corresponds to the group's drive when group control is enabled. You can adjust the analog drive approximately between -15 and +15. Advanced analog modeling button enabling, so this button here, and engaging this button turns on the analog emulation algorithm of the preamplifier and filters. How detailed it sounds depends on the instances or group's analog drive. Okay, so these go hand in hand. So we can set our drive level, but then we also need to engage to turn it on. Right, so we have, speaking of group, we have a group. And it's written here, group. So when the label is bright and lit, and the LED is lit, the group control is engaged, and the advanced analog modeling settings are common for all instances of the PSP PreQursor2 set to the group mode. Okay, so they go into a bit more of a blurb of, I guess, what I said and what the detail. And I mean, I'll read what they say because it's perfectly summed up, right? So in the old days, it was common to use a mixing desk which handled all or most of the inputs and outputs. Each mixer usually had its unique sound, which helped to glue the sound of the mix together. Today, we have a lot of great plugins. We choose to mimic the sound of the best analog gear, but we often miss having a simple solution to get a coherent sound of the mix. PSP PreQursor2 works like a console with adjustable operating level for all channels with group-enabled plugin instances, or to control the drive or even bypass the analog emulation for selected tracks. So, as I said, they're basically emulating an entire mixing desk and getting them to be coherent and work together by grouping them. So you can't have different groups, like there's other plugins that allow you to have groups, various groups, and group multiple plugins together, whatever else. This is either a group on or group off. Simple as that. It's obviously going to find all of these across all of your tracks and group them together. So for instance, if we pull it up on another song, just to prove the point, and if I actually clicked on the right plugin, that would have been a lot better. So there we go. I clicked on the right plugin this time. So now we have two. Let's bring that in. So at the moment, I could have different settings per each one. I could turn one on, turn one off, whatever. Now, if I group it, what happens? Okay, so nothing happens, I guess, until I group them together. As soon as I group them together, now they function together. So we can take, so I guess the advantage here is that you determine which ones are in the group. Even though you've got group turned on here, you could have, let's go one more song, just to show the example of this. Right, so imagine these are not songs. Imagine these are actually tracks. So we could come along here and we could go, I want to group all of them together. And I'm going to turn all the analog on, turn it off, turn it on, whatever, set the values appropriately. And I go, okay, I like this sound across the board, but I'm not liking it on this track here. I'm going to turn the group off here. Now I can turn the analog off on here. I could change the value, whatever I want to do. It's not in the group. These two are still in the group. We can still control them across the board. So we could have all of our tracks in a group, and then as we so choose, we could remove them from the group. Now, if I go and add it back into the group, it seems that it will take automatically the group settings. Now, the good thing is, looking at this, if I take it out of the group, it remembers what settings it did have before. So if I add it to the group, bang, jumps up, take it out, it goes back to the individual setting that was already dialed in. So you can try it in and out of the group and not lose your setting. I like that. That's good. Right. Okay. So anyway, that was an example there of that feature. So that's a nice feature. I like that. All right. And now our next section. So they're all broken up into, I guess, separate little sections here. This is our sort of, I guess it's our input output control here. So we had our phase, polarity. We've got our analog emulation style characteristics here, or distortion, whatever you want to call it. Now we have a high pass filter type situation here and some other controls, I guess. Anyway, we've got a high pass filter here. It adjusts a high pass filter. High pass filter is disengaged in the fully counterclockwise off, obviously. So we're off at the moment. When engaged, you can adjust the high pass filter between 20 and 250 hertz in 10 steps. So, okay, so it's a stepped dial. It's not an individual dial. And you can see that, yeah, it works like a high pass filter. Okay, pretty simple. We have a selector switch here. This switch to assign the processing to only the selected channel. So the processing can be selected to the entire stereo of the channel. We could set it to the left, set it to the right. We could set it to the mid or to the side. So that's nice too, having mid and side in there. Okay, so our next control here is our low filter. So the button up the top engages or disengages the actual band, I guess. So you could turn them all off, and then you could turn on the ones you want to use as you so choose. We've got our gain control here, and you can obviously see the value. Goes up to 15, goes down -15. We can select our frequency bands here. Again, it is a stepped type approach. So it says 5 different frequencies. So, okay, they've labeled 3 of the frequencies, 30, 60, and 120, but there's actually 5. So you can't see the value down here come up, not when I have the mouse on it, but you can see there it says 42. So you got 30, 42, 60, 85, and 120. So you can see it down the bottom there anyway, but they've physically labeled on the device just 3, but you actually have 5 settings there. The Q button, when engaged, will obviously illuminate. Of course it will. The Q factor of this filter is set to a narrow bandwidth, resulting in a steep curve. When disengaged, the Q factor is set to a wide bandwidth curve. Okay, so you've only got 2 curve styles. You've got, when it's disengaged, it's wide, so that's a wide Q, and that is a narrow Q. Each one of these other bands is identical. Same setup. Q, narrow, wide. Gain, plus, minus. On, off, on. Say it the right way. Difference is the frequency ranges. Okay, so they all are stepped frequency ranges, so you don't get, you don't get really accurate results, but what you're going to get is good coverage with clean results. So you can see here, again, they've only labeled certain frequencies, but there are more. So you've got 25K, but you can always look at the little guide down the bottom here. 25, 20.2, 16, 12.6, and 10. And again, you can read these values, 1.5K up to 7.2K, 200 hertz up to 900 hertz, anywhere in between, not anywhere in between, stepped settings in between. Okay, then on the very end here, we have this EQ button here. So this button disables all the filters in the processor or enables them. This responds to the EQ only. So we can still have, so we could turn the EQ off and we will still get what they refer to as the output level and saturation controls are active. When EQ and analog are enabled, so if we had both these enabled, both the preamp and in-filter emulations are working. When analog is enabled and EQ is disabled, the preamp emulation is still working and color the sound. So we can use this for just a analog warming emulation type approach with some drive and not use the EQ, or we can activate the EQ and add some more there. We have an output control here, so we can obviously balance the level of our effect of this plugin. So for instance, if it's boosting frequencies too much, we can reduce the output to get it level so that we can bypass and unbypass the plugin. We can obviously boost if we cut too much and reduces. So we can obviously use that control there. Pretty simple. So we've also got a saturation control here and an overlight. So the saturation control, they're stating it is post output knob and its ceiling is 0 dBFS. So we'll just read the description so we understand it. So the legacy PSP precursor had the second generation saturation algorithm implemented. They used the same algorithm in the PSP PreQursor2, which is what we're looking at here, due to its good sound and backward compatibility. The saturation algorithm affects only the output of the plugin. The new advanced analog modeling algorithm that is gauged with the analog button, this first part, influences the input and filters in a very subtle way, thus can be used either separately or together with the saturation algorithm. So the output LED, this LED will flash, I'm guessing this is the over thing, when 0 dBFS is exceeded on output. Don't worry, it's not indicating any internal distortion. Once triggered, the LED will stay dark red until reset. Click the LED to reset it. Note that when saturation is engaged, you will never exceed 0 dBFS on the output of the plugin. But I'm guessing you will impart more saturation, I would imagine. But we'll check that out. We've also got some sort of standard options here with A, Bs and presets, and there are various things like that that are usually included in these PSP plugins. So there's no difference there. All right, so that's the basics of the plugin. So how about we just have a bit of a play with it and have a listen. So let's start with some basics here. Let's turn the EQ off. All right, I mean, we can turn each of the bands off as well. And we'll see what we can get out of this. So, as I said, we've got a song here. That's bypassed. Unbypassed. Shouldn't really be doing anything because we don't have anything. Just make sure they're set to 0. So, polarity, it's not really going to do what we want in this regard. If we turn the analog on, all right, we've got it set to 0. We turn that up. Now, I can imagine this effect being a sort of effect that once you put it across all of your tracks, combines together to create that effect. Putting it on one single track like this as a song is probably not going to give you something very obvious. It's going to be very subtle to hear. But, putting it across all of your tracks, I'm sure will glue things together. Very similar to, say, the Slate VCC style plugin there where it can be quite subtle when used on individual tracks, but across the board they all combine together to give you that sound. So if we check out the saturation, it's interesting that the light didn't come up there even though I pushed it. So if we just set that to 0, let's set our analog there up. Okay, I mean, I can hear a slight difference there, but as I said, it is subtle. Obviously, we've got a filter. We turn the EQ on. We can apply it to the left, to the right, just to the sides, or just to the mid. You might say you don't hear much impact when I have it set to the sides, but that would be because there's not much low end in the sides. So if you just want to clean up that little bit of low end out of your sides there, obviously you can use this and set it to sides. Perfect. But I'm assuming it also impacts all of your EQ stuff. Yeah, so you can hear that's sounding weird now because this giant boost is only being imparted on the side. So all of this EQ stuff is being impacted by this. Most people are probably going to use it in stereo mode, but there's always a case for doing different. Oh, we went over now. So, okay, so this volume did not cause that to go over, but this boost did. That's interesting. Alright, so just run through the extremes of each of the bands here. Now we can obviously cut. Or boost. We can go very narrow, very wide. Obviously that's a ridiculous setting there. So if we sort of go for more of a practical type approach, well, actually, why don't we check out, let's check out a preset. Let's see what they've got here. And we'll get a practical approach here. Okay, so, yeah, look, they mainly got it for all of the individual tracks here. What's a vintage? So it's doing a little bit of a boost at 900, cut at 25, saturation, some analog, and a little bit of low pass. So we're going for a bit of a tape style effect here. Obviously that's a volume increase. It's adding some nice texture there, so we've obviously got a fair bit of drive going on. Just tiny little bit of a low pass filter, a high pass filter at 20 Hertz. We are also boosting a little bit of sub at 40. We are boosting a little bit of 560. Oh, that's got a narrow Q as well, that one there. Boosting a tiny bit of 4.3K, and then cutting a little bit of 25K each, these two with narrow bands. I adjusted that. We've got, we don't have saturation on in this case, which you could obviously do. So, that sounds nice. I like that, so, this approach here is good if you're looking for an EQ that's going to provide this functionality with a little bit of this analog warmth type approach. So, I could see this, say, in my setup where I would have the Slate VCC and then I would have a separate SSL plugin from UAD. If I exclude the compression of the SSL, this plugin here, in theory, could possibly allow me to have one plugin on each of the tracks instead of having the Slate and the SSL. I could have this one here. It's providing our channel drive here, which would be, I'm just going to say, equivalent to the VCC. Obviously, I'm not comparing the two. I'm not saying they're identical. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying in concept, this section here would be similar to that, potentially with this saturation as well. And then we've got our EQ setting here. And again, nobody's called out that this is an SSL emulation at all. This is just a nice EQ, but it could function sort of that way, I guess. So, it's going to have a different sound, obviously, and that is the point. But, so this is a nice little setup here. So, if this interests you, then go and check it out, get a demo, see what it does to your songs, see how the analog drive and the analog saturation components assist gelling your mix together and getting that analog warmth that people are always striving for in the digital realm that we work in these days. So there you go. There's the PreQursor2 from PSP. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I'm happy to help where I can. And if you are interested in the plugin, go to PSP's website, check out, get a demo, check out their other plugins while you're there, and just see what you think of all of them. And let me know in the comments. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. I'd love to hear your opinions on it, and I'm sure PSP would love to have some feedback as well. Maybe they'll watch the video and they'll read your comments. So, definitely put some down there. If you do like what you see here, then please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. Hopefully the video has been helpful. I thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.